The ringing in my ears started before the words fully registered, not the gentle hum of conversation or clinking glasses, something sharper, like the high-pitched whine after a gunshot in an enclosed space. I stood in the marble lobby of the Harvard Club, my hand frozen on the navy lapel of my suit jacket, watching the floor manager thrust a white apron toward my chest. "Late again," he hissed, not looking at my face. "Kitchen entrance is through the left. Tray service starts in 5. My fingers went numb. The federal judge credentials in my purse suddenly weighed nothing, everything. I opened my mouth to correct him, to explain that I wasn't late staff, I was the mother of the groom, when Sterling Thorne's voice cut through the lobby like a blade. "It's about maintaining standards, Madison." His words carried from the coat check, deliberately loud, performing for an invisible audience. If Ethan's mother shows up looking like she just finished a shift at the laundromat, keep her away from the partners. We can't have the cleaning crew chatting up Supreme Court justices. The apron hung between us, stark white against my trembling hands. I didn't pull out my badge. I didn't correct anyone. I just looked at the linen in my grip, then at the man 50 feet away who'd just reduced 30 years of my life to dirty laundry. I tied the strings. "My name is Olivia, I'm 48, and I'm a federal appellate judge. This is the story of how I reminded a room full of lawyers that the law sees everything, even when you think you're invisible." The knot pulled tight against my waist, and something clicked into place. Not rage, colder than that, clarity. In my courtroom, silence is the most dangerous weapon. You let a defendant talk long enough, comfortable enough, and they'll build their own gallows. I decided Sterling Thorne deserved the same courtesy. I walked into the ballroom not as Judge Olivia Chen, youngest appointment to the Second Circuit in 20 years, but as furniture, a ghost in white linen, and the moment I became invisible, they felt safe. The transformation was instantaneous. I'd studied this phenomenon, the gray rock method, they call it in psychology journals. Make yourself unremarkable, and people stop seeing a person. They see a function. The Manhattan elite gliding past me didn't register my face, my education, my authority. They saw a tray, an obstacle to navigate around, a thing that refilled drinks. The air smelled like money, not just expensive perfume, but something deeper, old leather and older privilege. I moved through clusters of tuxedos and silk, my reflection fragmenting across crystal and polished silver. Across the room, my son Ethan stood near the champagne tower, 26 years old, brilliant, drowning in his rented tuxedo. Our eyes met, his widened, his mouth opened. "Mom." But I gave him the look. The same microscopic head shake I give bailiffs when a defendant is about to have an outburst. "Stand down, trust me." He hesitated. Then he stepped back into shadow, and I knew he understood. This wasn't his mother at a wedding. This was a federal judge going undercover. I'd grown up understanding invisibility, not the kind Sterling Thorne was weaponizing, but the survival kind. 30 years ago, I wore a gray jumpsuit and pushed a mop across the Bronx Supreme Court's marble floors, the same floors I'd eventually rule over. I'd propped my evidence law textbook on wet floor signs, stealing 10 minutes between emptying trash cans. I learned the Constitution by cleaning up after the people who practiced it. Sterling looked at a server and saw failure. I looked at a server and saw the hunger that built empires. That's why the apron didn't humiliate me. It activated me. I circled closer to the Thorne family. Sterling held court near the orchestra, scotch in hand, gesturing like he was conducting. He radiated the particular confidence of men who've never faced consequences. "More scotch, sir?" I kept my voice flat, scrubbed of Harvard, scrubbed of the bench. He waved me off without looking. "Keep it coming. Try not to spill on the Italian leather." "Of course, sir." I walked away, adrenaline settling into cold focus. They thought I was serving drinks. I was serving rope. Near the floor-to-ceiling windows, I found Madison, Sterling's daughter, Ethan's fiancée, posing with her bridesmaids. She wore a dress that probably cost more than my first car, but she wore it like armor, not grace, all sharp edges and performance. A young server approached them, early 20s, brown hair in a tight bun, hands shaking slightly on the silver tray. "Hors d'oeuvres, Miss Thorne." Madison spun, face contorting. God, no! I specifically told the coordinator no shellfish near the bridal party. Are you trying to kill me, or are you just stupid? The music seemed to stop in my head. The girl went pale. I'm so sorry, I didn't... Clearly you don't know much. Madison cut in, voice sharp as broken glass. Go, before you ruin the dress. The server turned to leave, eyes welling. In her haste, she bumped a high-top table. A champagne flute wobbled, tipped, splashed a few drops onto marble, nowhere near Madison's precious gown. Sterling barked a laugh. You see this, Ethan? This is why we pay for the VIP package. Good help isn't just hard to find, it's extinct. Ethan looked sick. He started forward, but Madison's hand pressed against his chest, claiming him, silencing him. I moved before thinking. Knelt on the cold marble beside the girl, pulling a cloth from my apron. It's just water and grapes, honey. Wipes right up. She looked at me, terrified. I'm going to get fired. You won't. My voice stayed soft, certain. I promise. As I wiped the floor, I looked up. From my knees, the angle was perfect. Madison towered above me, sneering, sipping champagne. She thought she was the queen because she was standing and I was kneeling. She didn't understand the oldest law of power. True nobility serves, it protects. The weak are the ones who need to step on others to feel tall. I stood, holding the dirty cloth, caught Madison's eye. For just a second, something flickered in her face. Uncertainty, maybe recognition of something that didn't belong on a server. All set, miss, I said, voice empty of warmth. About time, she huffed, turning away. I walked toward the service entrance, but I wasn't collecting evidence anymore. The verdict on her character was already in. Now I just needed to document the crime. The girl from earlier was sitting on a milk crate during her break, a thick book open on her lap. I squinted. LSAT Prep Guide. The pages were dog-eared, margins filled with notes in cheap blue ink. My chest tightened. I knew that book. I'd owned that exact edition. I traded my empty tray for a bottle of vintage Dom Perignon and moved toward the corner table, where the real power stood. The partners, the inner circle. They weren't discussing the wedding. They were discussing vulnerability. As I approached, Sterling leaned in, voice dropping to a purr. The Meridian antitrust merger is done, gentlemen. $40 billion. Biggest payout this firm has seen in a decade. I poured champagne into the glass of the man beside him, senior partner, according to the firm website I'd memorized. He looked nervous. I don't know, Sterling. Justice Department is breathing down our necks, and the case just got assigned to Judge Chen in the Second Circuit. I've heard she's meticulous. My hand didn't shake. I filled the glass to the perfect rim, not a drop spilled. Sterling laughed, dry, ugly. Chen? Olivia Chen? Please. She's a diversity hire with a bleeding heart. Spent her early career in family court. She cares about feelings, not fiscal quarters. I stepped back into shadow, gripping the cold bottle. But the environmental impact reports, the partner pressed. If Chen sees the toxicity levels in the water table data, she'll block the merger. Clean Water Act violation. Sterling took a slow sip. She won't see them. The circle went quiet. We're not going to shred them, are we? We're not amateurs, Sterling scoffed. We're going to bury them. Toxicity reports go in the middle of the discovery handover, box 4000, right between cafeteria receipts and parking validation logs. She's a federal judge with a backed-up docket. She doesn't have time, and she sure as hell doesn't have the brainpower to dig through 2 million pages to find the one chart that matters. Cold electricity ran down my spine. I felt the way I do when a jury foreman stands to read a verdict. He just admitted to spoliation of evidence, conspiracy to defraud the court. In front of the very judge he planned to deceive. We steamroll her, Sterling concluded, raising his glass. Walk in there, use big words, hide the evidence, walk out with $40 billion. To Meridian. To Meridian, the men echoed. I adjusted the towel over my arm. In my head, I wasn't serving drinks. I was drafting a bench warrant. More champagne, gentlemen? Keep it coming, sweetheart, Sterling said, back already turned. I walked away, bottle heavy in my hand. He thought he was burying evidence. He was burying himself. But Sterling wasn't done. He draped an arm around the senior partner's shoulder, shifting topics. And it's not just the firm winning today. Madison just secured the summer associate position at the Solicitor General's office, the D.C. internship. The partner raised an eyebrow. Impressive. That program accepts what? 3 applicants a year? Usually reserved for top 1% of the Ivy League? I froze mid-step. I sat on that oversight committee. The selection was blind, rigorous, merit-based only. Sterling chuckled. Let's just say the selection committee suddenly remembered how much they enjoy the new reading room I funded. They had to make some administrative adjustments. Adjustments? There was some girl, Sterling waved dismissively. Nobody from a state school. Perfect LSAT score. Apparently a real striver, but she doesn't have the pedigree. We couldn't let a slot like that go to waste on someone who doesn't have connections to use it, so her application got misplaced. My blood stopped moving. I looked back at the service entrance, the girl with the LSAT book, dog-eared pages, cheap blue ink, hands that shook from exhaustion, not fear. The pieces locked together with terrifying precision. She was the nobody Sterling was talking about, the girl who'd studied until her eyes burned, who'd worked double shifts to pay application fees, only to have her future stolen and given to Madison like a party favor. This wasn't social cruelty anymore. This was grand larceny of a human life. I set the champagne bottle down with a deliberate thud, pulled out my phone, opened a contact. Senator Reynolds, keynote speaker. I knew Reynolds was in the green room preparing his keynote speech. I'd received the event program earlier that week, and we'd been friends since law school. I typed 2 sentences. Code blue, need a witness. Sent. Within minutes, his response came back. On my way. I returned to my position near Sterling's group, waiting. I wasn't the mother of the groom anymore. I was the judge, and court was now in session. The kitchen doors swung open with a bang that cut through the orchestra. Senator William Reynolds stood in the frame, flanked by 2 security detail agents. His face was on every news channel in the country. Sterling's face lit up. He smoothed his tuxedo, stepped forward with hand extended. Senator! What an honor, Sterling Thorne. Managing partner. Reynolds walked right past him, didn't even blink. Walked straight to the service station where I stood holding a dirty rag. Olivia. Reynolds' voice boomed in the sudden quiet. Judge Chen, why on earth are you wearing an apron? The silence that followed was absolute, the kind that comes after a bomb detonates but before the sound wave hits. Sterling's hand hung in midair, grasping nothing. He looked at the senator, then at me, the cleaning lady, then back. His face went from flush to ash gray in 3 seconds. Judge, Madison whispered, champagne glass tilting. I reached behind my back, untied the apron knot, pulled the white fabric over my head, folded it slowly, deliberately, placed it on the tray beside empty glasses, smoothed my suit lapels. Actually, Miss Thorne, I said, voice projecting to the back of the room without raising it, I'm the presiding judge on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, the same court currently reviewing your father's $40 billion merger. Sterling made a choking sound. Judge Chen, we had no idea. This is a misunderstanding. We were just joking. I cut him off, stepped into his personal space. He shrank back. Was it a joke when you admitted to conspiracy to violate the Clean Water Act? When you detailed your plan to bury toxicity reports in Box 4000? Blood left his lips completely. That's privileged conversation, he stammered. Not when you announce it to a waiter in a crowded room, Mr. Thorne. There's no attorney-client privilege in the catering line. You admitted to spoliation of evidence in front of a federal judge, I nodded at Reynolds, and a United States senator. I can explain. You will, I promised, at your disbarment hearing. I turned to Madison. She looked small now, the armor dissolved, just a child playing dress-up. And the Solicitor General internship? I continued, watching her flinch. I sit on that oversight committee. We take academic integrity very seriously. I'll be personally pulling your file tomorrow morning. Very interested to see how an application got misplaced to make room for you. Mother, do something. Madison grabbed her mother's arm, but her mother stared at the floor, wishing she could dissolve into it. Ethan, I said, turning to my son. He stepped from the shadows. Didn't look scared anymore, looked relieved. He glanced at Madison, then walked over and stood by my side. "Ready to go, Mom?" "One last thing." I turned back to Sterling, now visibly trembling. "You were right about one thing, Mr. Thorne. You really should be careful who you talk to. You never know when the cleaning lady might hold the gavel." I turned on my heel and walked out. The heavy doors swung shut behind us, sealing the silence. In the lobby, Ethan caught up with Madison near the coat check. I heard him say quietly, "I can't do this, Madison. I'm sorry." He slipped the ring from his pocket and placed it in her hand. She didn't argue, just stared at it, then at him, before walking away without a word. The engagement was over. I left immediately. Within 20 minutes, I was in a cab, heels kicked off, drafting an affidavit on my phone. The fallout was swift and absolute. 3 months passed quickly. The headlines were still running. Meridian merger blocked. Thorne and partners under federal investigation. Sterling didn't just lose the case. He lost the firm. When the Bar Association received the transcript of his confession, corroborated by a U.S. senator who had recorded the entire exchange on his phone after I texted him, standard practice for his security detail at public events, his license evaporated faster than the champagne he used to drink. But the real justice wasn't in the destruction. It was in the reallocation. I sat in my chambers one morning, sun hitting mahogany. Ethan sat across from me, looking lighter than he had in years. "She called yesterday," Ethan said, stirring coffee. "She's working retail in Soho, part of her community service agreement. Said her feet hurt." I smiled, signing a document. "Payne's an excellent teacher. Maybe she'll finally learn respect isn't an inheritance." "And the internship?" I opened my top drawer, pulled out a fresh file. That was the easiest ruling I ever made. Just last week, I'd made a point of finding Sophia, the server from the gala. I'd contacted the catering company and obtained her information with her permission through the event coordinator. I found her in the library, buried under those same LSAT books. When I handed her the acceptance letter to the Solicitor General program, the one Madison tried to steal, she didn't scream, didn't jump, just cried, silent and shaking, the way people do when they've been invisible so long they forget what it feels like to be seen. "She starts Monday," I told Ethan. "She didn't need a favor. She just needed a fair trial." I stood, walked to the window. The skyline stretched out, towers of glass and steel, monuments to power and money, but down on the street the real city moved. Janitors, servers, bus drivers, the invisible army that keeps the world turning. I thought about the apron folded in my closet at home, right next to my judicial robes. Different uniforms, same master. Truth. Sterling Thorne thought power was about who you could command. He forgot that true power is about who you can protect. I turned back to my son, my gavel resting heavy and silent on the desk. "Justice is blind," I said softly. "But she isn't deaf, and she hears everything." Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.